Hello everyone, now you will hear a brief retelling of the film Only the Strongest. Enjoy watching. Louis Stevens served in the army in Brazil and was about to return home, but before leaving he decided to join the local capoeirist. The fun ended when the authorities came for the Green Beret and hurried him back to the USA. Stevens thanked the Brazilian who taught him capoeira, and he gave him a musical instrument, berimbau. Stevens returned to his hometown of Miami. The first thing he wanted to do was visit the school where he studied. It's covered in graffiti and littered with garbage. And in the toilet, the student asked if the guy would sell him some dope. No one pays attention to the science teacher Carrigan, and raising his hand only to send him to hell later. The teacher has to thump at recess in order to somehow endure the mess going on at school. Carrigan greeted the former student. Stevens said that he had been training Brazilians to fight for 4 years, but now it was time to return to civilian life. According to Carrigan, nothing good awaits him at school. The staircases are fenced with a lattice. The kids either jump themselves or threw someone off for fun. The cleaners are already tired of scraping them off the floor. Carrigan hasn't decided yet whether he's a teacher or a zookeeper after all. These are not children, but some kind of animals. They are not worth saving. 75% of them carry guns and only 12% graduate from school. Stevens realized that he had nothing to do here and was about to leave, but then he found himself among the crowd watching a healthy Jamaican mocking a boy for refusing to sell drugs here. Stevens demanded to release the student. The criminal bullied and the soldier was surrounded by a gang of Jamaicans. Other students liked this kind of showdown. They were sure that the upstart would get hit on the head, but the Green Beret, under the joyful shouts, piled on all 3 bandits, using an unusual fighting technique. Patlety Amble went to the knockout, and Carrigan concluded that this was the only way to attract the attention of a barbarian schoolboy. At the Teachers' Council, he offered to teach problem students Brazilian Kung Fu so that they would direct their energy in the right direction. But other teachers do not support the idea of teaching scumbags and beating people even more effectively. However, the guy was supported by a young teacher who studied with him in the same class. She says that Stevens was also a troubled teenager, but then Carrigan helped him improve. Perhaps he will also become a good mentor for the guys. Stevens thanked Diana and tried to ask her out, but the girl claims that she liked only Stevens' initiative, not him. She's also dating the teacher who tried to stop Stevens. Together with Carrigan, they found an abandoned building at the fire station, in which the students will now study capoeira. But first you need to kick the homeless out of here and wash the urine off the floor. When the cleaning was finished, the hooligans were brought on the school bus. The motley company is lined up in a row and does not shut up for a second. A case has already been opened against each of them. Carrigan introduced the boys to their instructor and clarified that the Green Beret would not babysit them like other teachers. Stevens demanded that Donovan turn up the music and show the boys the jing, the swaying that always starts the capoeira. It was funny to the hooligans until Stevens showed how basic movements turn into spectacular kicks. After that, he asked to put on music recorded in Brazil. Orlando wanted to turn it off and reinforced his intention with a folding knife. The acrobat decided to play with the bully and started jumping all over the building. The scumbag seriously set out to cut off the teacher, but having first received the arsonist, he ended up on the floor. Stevens proved the effectiveness of the capoeira and invited the guys to the next lesson. To make peace with Erland, he returned the knife to him. Carrigan told about the young man's cousin, who leads an entire gang. Apparently, Stevens is not at home, so he spent the night right there in the garage. He was woken up by a cheerful remix that Donovan created from Brazilian music. It sounds much more cheerful this way. Stevens will spend his first full-fledged lesson on the street, but everyone is somehow shy about jingling. Even Shay, whom the man saved in the schoolyard. Everyone thought that they would be taught to fight, not to dance. Shay got slapped in the face by Eddie and a fight almost broke out between them. Stevens cancelled the class because of this, leaving only one neck. The teacher promised the dark-skinned boy that next time he would be able to pile on Eddie. The schoolboy has learned something and now he sends the enemy to the ground over and over again. After receiving a breath, Eddie gave up, and Stevens convinced the other guys of the effectiveness of the martial art. Some school children also began to dance the jing. Diana also came to watch the classes. Today, the mentor introduces the students to the musical instruments that are used in the capoeira. Stevens still hopes to find approaches to Orlando, but he is not going to play on wooden shit and ride like a goat, and the instructor himself, in his opinion, is just a loser. One evening, Stevens found Orlando on the basketball court and asked why he did not come to class. In any case, it's better than working for my brother and stealing cars. Stevens was surrounded by bandits from all sides. Just then Orlando Silverio's cousin drove up. He saw how the stranger easily scattered his people on the basketball court. Silverio has already heard about capoeira's teacher. He offers Stevens to train his men to fight as well. He will pay much more than a school teacher can earn. But in response, Stevens was rude to the authority. Then Silverio offered to find out which of them is the real master of capoeira, because he himself grew up in the slums of Rio de Janeiro. The bandits started clapping and setting the rhythm. After a short fight, the big guy pushed Stevens so that he could not get up and kicked the already lying opponent. Silverio decided that Stevens wasn't good enough to teach his people, but he could teach his brother the basics. Just don't fill Orlando's head with nonsense. The authority has big plans for him. The beaten soldier returned to his shelter. Diana helps him heal his wounds there. The blonde was sure that Silverio would beat him, so she was on duty at the gym with a first aid kit. We learn that they did not just study in the same class, but even met. The soldier divorced the lady so that she showed him a handstand and he settled down next to her. They remembered the old days and spent the night together. No one has been giggling in class for a long time. Irisho joined the students. The guys are making progress and enthusiastically mastering an unusual martial art. Diana cooled down to her lover. She likes a tan muscular D-mob much more. In front of the principal and the teacher, Shay accidentally broke Orlando's nose. But if earlier it could lead to a stabbing, now the guys have dispersed in peace. If it worked for them, it can work in other educational institutions. Therefore, the director proposed to introduce the APRA into the curriculum in all schools of the district. Classes are filmed on camera. Soon Stevens will have to supervise the training of 1,200 students. The man agreed to take his guys out for the night outside the city, but the terrified school children are afraid to get off the bus. Diana would also prefer to spend the night in a hotel. Everyone is still sleeping on the bus, and Steven is already doing a warm-up on the beach early in the morning. The guys immediately joined the teacher. The guys, after riding along the beach all day, had a great time, and today they have already agreed to spend the night in tents. Orlando is sitting apart and sad by the water. Today he had to work for his cousin and make money. So they will soon find a replacement for him and he will be left without a salary. But Stevens convinces the schoolboy that he does not have to disassemble stolen cars all his life and live in the same block. The world is much wider, it has a lot of possibilities. Silverio and his men were already waiting for the school buses. He reprimanded his brother for not showing up for work and slapped him in the face. The bandit was going to take Junior out of school, but Stevens wouldn't let him. The gangster, seeing Diana, threatened that if the teacher took his brother, he would take his woman. He threatens to do something terrible if Stevens doesn't back down. They almost got into a fight again, but since the skirmish took place near the school, the police arrived pretty quickly. Orlando agreed to leave with his brother, but promised to return to school. Do you want a war? You'll get it. The bandits decided that instead of killing Stevens, they would frame him. The villains broke into the school grounds, beat the teacher, cut the wheels of all cars in the parking lot and smashed the toilet. The crowd surrounded Diana and Silverio gave her a final warning. He then destroyed Mr. Carrigan's classroom and attacked the teacher himself. Silverio decided to remove the witness and set fire to the room, leaving Carrigan lying unconscious on the floor. Shay and Donovan saw the smoke and ran to check if everything was okay with the teacher. They helped him leave the classroom engulfed in flames. Donovan returned to rescue Berenbaugh, but because of the thick smoke, he could not go back out into the corridor. The collapsed ceiling finally condemned the guy. Stevens ran to the school just as firefighters pulled out the lifeless body of his student. The reporter gives the news about the tragedy as a result of the confrontation between the new teacher and a local gang. Like, was the Kapura training program worth the life of a 17-year-old schoolboy? The director immediately fired Stevens and ordered him not to appear here again. Shay, seeing the teacher, told him that bandits were looking for him everywhere. He needed to be careful. In the evening, Orlando came to the gym in secret from his brother. He asked Steven to get out of town and forget about the gang, but he has already found out where Silverio's garage is and is going to visit him. The guy does not want the mentor to go to the next world after Donovan, because he alone cannot cope with the army of Silverio. At night, Steven sneaked into the garage of the authority and piled on the car mechanics. The men cornered him, but the iron stick in his hands turned into a fighting pole, so soon only one big man remained on his feet, and even then not for long. But then an impenetrable giant came out with a welding machine. However, it was a mistake on his part to get under the car. Stevens immediately pinned the big guy down. The last thing the former soldier did was blow up a car full of bundles of money. Silverio ordered his gang to find the attacker. They are in cars combing the area. Stevens attacked 3 of them by jumping from a tree. He knocked out a couple more among the sheets. After Stevens was attacked by bandits with cleavers and bats, the Green Beret scattered them too, but when he drove up to help, he was surrounded by a whole crowd and Stevens had no chance to fight back. He was beaten, but they did not kill him, because Silverio ordered the teacher to be delivered to him alive. Bundy was blocked by the way by Capurist schoolchildren, who were called to help by Orlando. He also stood in a row with them. The guys are going to recapture their teacher. But Silverio did not allow the massacre. Instead, he decided to personally punish his younger brother. He was stopped by Stevens and challenged to a second one-on-one fight. The fighters took a cleaver in their hands, but soon Stevens was left unarmed. He wrung Silverio's hand and also disarmed him. The big guy flunked Stevens, but started showing off too early and also ended up on the sand. Patrick was going to strangle the opponent. The students decided to support the teacher with a song and tightened the Brazilian folk. This gave Stevens strength and he immediately defeated the villain. And schoolchildren kicked the bandits who pulled for pistols. Having completed the case with a crown blow, Stevens found himself in the arms of the guys. The police arrived at the scene of the fight. Everyone ran away, except for the schoolchildren and Silverio, who remained lying on the sand. Orlando immediately turned over his brother to the police and told them that he had set fire to the classroom and thereby killed Donovan. He is ready to repeat it in court. Soon the graduation ceremony was held at the school and the less problematic guys gave Stevens a surprise. They invited professional capurists to the stage and even brought his friend from Brazil.